Janet looked intently at the painting. It was oddly calming to her. It was a simple still life, a plate, fork and knife, glass, and a bottle on a table. Nothing out of the ordinary, except for the eye. In the middle of the plate there was an eye. It felt like it was staring through her very soul. She became mesmerized by it. She couldn't pull her gaze away. What was that? Her skin began to crawl. Was someone looking at her? She could feel cold, dead eyes on her back. As she looked behind her, the security guard behind her made eye contact and smiled. She turned back. That's a little creepy, she thought. She gazed back at the painting. Again. He was staring at her again. She looked back at him again. There. Staring. Again. She called out, "You got a problem?" The guard turned to look at her with a confused look upon his face. "Why don't you take a picture? It'll last longer." With that, she got up to leave. She didn't know it yet, but she had just witnessed SCP-099, and her sanity would be leaving her soon. She left the museum. It was cold, and it looked like it might rain. Perhaps it would be prudent to take a taxi, rather than risk being caught out in the rain. She hailed a cab and got in. She gave the driver her address and sat back in her seat. As she read through her phone, she felt it again. Eyes on her. She glanced up into the rearview mirror. There. Again. He was staring at her. What was it with all these perverts today? Rather than draw attention and put herself in a dangerous situation, she looked back down at her phone and ignored it. She got back to her apartment, thankfully unharmed. As she opened the door to her apartment, she could have sworn she caught a glimpse of someone in the mirror. Not possible. Her hallway was only 1 meter wide, and there was a wall right there. But something about the image looked familiar. What was it? She felt she recognized it. It was all in her head. Had to be. That eerie feeling of being watched wouldn't leave her the rest of the night. She had herself a nice cup of chamomile and settled in for the evening. A good night's sleep, and she'd feel better in the morning. That night, her dreams were unsettling. She wasn't one for vivid dreams, but tonight was different. It was as if she was living out someone else's life, in their body, but unable to alter or control it, replaying what had happened before to them. She looked at herself in the mirror, but she was now a man. She wore a suit with a bowler hat and adjusted her tie. A woman came down the hallway, smiled at him, and gave him a kiss on the cheek, then continued past him down the hallway. She felt a sudden wave of anger, seemingly out of nowhere. What was it with her? Every time, she just couldn't leave him alone. Oh, she acted like she was going off to clean the living room or fetch the groceries. He knew better. She was plotting and scheming against him. He didn't yet know what her endgame was, but he knew she was up to something. Always spying on him, from around the corner or behind his back. She called him paranoid. Well, that didn't mean it wasn't true. He walked down the street, casually greeting people as he did every day. As per his usual routine, he stopped by the fresh grocer to choose an apple. As he looked down upon the selection and gently squeezed and inspected the produce, he caught a reflection in the apple in his hand. Thomas, the grocer, he was smirking at him. He raised his head and looked him in the eye. Thomas smiled. "What's your problem?" Thomas looked back in shock. "What? Nothing. I didn't..." "Don't even try. You did it yesterday and you did it again today. What is it? You have something to say to me?" No, monsieur." He tossed the man a coin and left, seemingly in a huff. What was he smirking at? Wait, yesterday he had seen Thomas with his wife. Did he perhaps mean his smirk for her? What did it mean? Was it an affair? Was that the secret in glances from his wife? Was she having an affair behind his back? Oh, he'd find out. He reached his studio in a bit of a state, but it didn't matter. There it was, the masterpiece he had been working on for months now. Everything would be fine once he could sit down and continue. This was his pièce de résistance. This was the one they would remember him for in the decades and centuries after his death. Nicholas's assistant came to take his coat. He seemed reserved, probably from the recent, violent verbal abuse his boss had taken to giving him. He hadn't always been like this, but since he had started on his masterpiece, his attitude had changed. He had become darker, meaner, obsessed and paranoid. "Monsieur René, how are you this morning?" he hesitantly asked. "I've told you before. It's Mr. Marguerite, you fool." "Nicholas, lowered his head in apology, and took his coat. He had, in fact, never asked to be called Mr. Marguerite before. Rene painted through the day. It was the only thing that seemed to ease his tension these days. They were all plotting against him. It wasn't just his wife's affair. Nicholas was involved somehow too. He could feel it in his bones. There was a grand conspiracy against him. Did they plan to take his money and leave him a pauper? Nicholas brought in his afternoon tea. "What do you think, Nicholas? Isn't he looking very smart?" Nicholas looked at the painting, seemingly confused. What man? There was no man in the picture. Rather than risk an outburst, he simply answered, "Yes, Mr. Marguerite." "Call me Rene. How many times do I—" "Never mind. Away with you." The painting was coming along well, but there was still much to do. Would he still be able to finish it in time? He felt like time was running short. The conspiracies surrounding him were picking up momentum. It wasn't an affair, or not just an affair. He was sure of it now. They planned to kill him. It didn't matter, as long as he could finish the painting. He continued his work. Days blurred into weeks, weeks into months. His appearance became more disheveled. Nothing mattered outside his work. His work became frantic, and he worked at a ceaseless pace. They were closing in on him. It wasn't just his assistant, his wife, and the grocer. No, the conspiracy was much larger than he had even imagined. They were jealous of him, jealous of his talent. It was the whole city. He didn't know how she had done it, but she convinced them all that he needed to disappear. Fine, but not yet. A few more days. It was all that he needed. He worked on, refusing to leave the studio now. He constantly felt Nicholas's eyes on him. His wife had come. She had told him he needed rest. Just a few hours sleep, and he could return. Did they believe him so stupid? It would take them mere minutes to commit their ghastly crime. He wouldn't give them the satisfaction. He wouldn't let them ruin his art. She threatened to call his friends to come and stop him. When that didn't work, she threatened to call the police or the hospital. The hospital! When he confronted her about her plans for him, she had stared back in horror. Sure, it was all his imagination. He had thrown her out and locked the door. Now, they were outside, the lot of them trying to stop him, trying to ruin his final piece of art. They pounded on the door, threatened him. Time was running short, but he only needed a few more minutes. A couple more brush strokes and it would be done. He frantically applied his brush to the canvas. Almost there, almost done, just a few more strokes. The door burst open. With one final flourish, it was done. He had completed it, his masterpiece. It was as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He smiled, got up and hugged his wife. He patted Nicholas on the shoulder, thanked the police for their concern, and went off home, to sleep, for what seemed like the first time in an eternity. He said, "It's finished. Isn't it magnificent? The apple completes it, don't you think?" The assembled room looked back in shock and surprise. The next morning, Rene's wife asked how he was and if he felt better. He looked at her in surprise. What did she mean? His outbursts? His insanity over the last few months, of course. Didn't he remember? He smiled back and said, "My dear, I have no idea what you're talking about. But you must excuse me. I've just had a brilliant idea for a new painting. I will call it The Son of Man." With that, he grabbed the green apple from his bedside and headed off. Janet woke with a start. Was that a dream? What did it mean? She had to figure it out, but she had recognized that painting of the man with the bowler hat. She headed back to the museum. There it was, The Son of Man by Rene Magritte. But that wasn't the right painting. It was the same painting she had seen yesterday. She asked the guard why this painting of an eyeball was there. He looked at her with confusion. "Ma'am, what eyeball? That is the Son of Man, the green apple, the bowler hat." What was he talking about? Was it some sort of trick? He was in on it. He was in on it with the security guard from yesterday. She didn't know what it was all about, but they were up to something. It was a conspiracy. It was a grand conspiracy and they were out to get her. She could feel their eyes on her. SCP-099 is a 73 by 50 cm painting titled The Portraits, created in 1935 by surrealist painter Rene Magritte. The original painting possesses mimetic properties that trigger acute paranoia and lingering psychological effects when viewed for too long or from a distance of approximately 3 meters or less. The painting depicts a simple still life, with the addition of a single eye staring back at the viewer. A reproduction of the work currently hangs in the Museum of Modern Art in New York, with critical elements removed to prevent the paranoia trigger. For a detailed description of the changes, refer to document 099B. Detailed reproductions and photographs of the original work retain its mimetic properties. Those who have viewed the painting for too long or from too close of a distance become subject to the delusion that any being or depiction of a being with eyes is staring at them. In extreme cases, subjects report that inanimate objects are making eye contact. The condition is so severe that subjects will even report making eye contact with individuals whose heads are completely turned away. Depending on the length of the original exposure to the painting, subjects may suffer from this condition until death, resulting in severe paranoia and enochlophobia. The next time you visit an art gallery, have a caution and don't look too closely. You never know what might be looking back. As always, have a care and remember to subscribe, like, and share, if you would. Until next time, farewell.